All righty, everybody. It is 1 p.m., so it is time for our MSPBD meeting. I would like to call to order the Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development MSPBD Committee meeting of the North County Transit District for October 28, 2024. Before we begin, I would like to inform members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. You must also register with the clerk by sending an email to clerk@nctd.org with a name and/or phone number and which item you would like to speak on. I will ask Suhil Rodriguez, clerk of the board, to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair Contreras.
I am present.
Committee Member Hensey.
Here.
Committee Member Martinez.
Here.
Committee Member Robinson.
Here.
This completes the roll call.
Amazing. We are all here and ready to go. But first, we need a safety brief and review evacuation procedures. Suhil, can you help us with that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevator. Once cleared of the building, please do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building, and there is a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Fantastic. And do we have any general public comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. So at this time, we are ending the public registration for general public comment. Let me turn my script and see what's coming up next. Okay, and before we get into specific items on the agenda for this meeting, I would like to outline meeting protocols to make sure this meeting is as efficient as possible. Some of you have been hearing this for years, so it won't come as a surprise. First, please hold your comments and/or questions until after the agenda item has been presented. Second, when the time comes for board member comments or questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you in the order raised. Our first item, I'm super excited about this, will be an update on the breeze speed and reliability study and associated project activities. Katie Persons, Director of Service Planning, will present this item. Katie, we are ready to go.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon. So as you mentioned, today we'll be discussing the breeze speed and reliability study. I'm joined virtually by Carl Fielding, who is our project manager from the WSP side. So he will be my phone a friend if we get too technical here. As a reminder, NCTD received a Caltrans planning grant for this study. Ultimately, the study's goal was to identify and prioritize opportunities to improve the reliability and travel time competitiveness of 10 key breeze corridors through transit supportive infrastructure, technology, operational adjustments, or other related policies. The study had secondary goals to optimize performance and safety for all modes and help achieve local goals for complete streets and multimodal mobility. We have developed a couple of project tools that help us to visualize and communicate the study. This includes our larger project study document that walks through the complete process and the analyses that were completed over the study duration. It also includes an overview of the rich operational data that we use to identify various hotspots of slow bus speeds or poor reliability throughout the system. On the right is a snapshot of our breeze speed and reliability project map, which is linked within the study document and also on the focus area fact sheets. And in the middle is an example of one of the 14 focus area fact sheets. So these are one-pagers that include brief descriptions of the projects that were identified, a summary of those projects' benefits in terms of riders who benefit and associated travel time savings. And these focus area fact sheets will allow us to work with each jurisdiction to identify funding for priority projects and also help us to incorporate those projects into planning studies over time. And that includes the comprehensive multimodal corridor planning study that SANDAG and Caltrans are leading for North County, as well as any other future planning studies that we come across. So we have 3 broad improvement categories within the study. This includes signals and traffic control, so items like new signals, transit signal priority, signal optimization, street and stop design, so you might see a right turn only, bus exempt sign, or curb extension at a stop, things like that. And last is bus operations. So that might be bus stop locations and spacing, or ensuring that we have the most efficient routing alignments. So one example of this is a minor routing adjustment we made in October to the Breeze 101 to help minimize the number of turns that the bus needs to make in order to access the UTC Transit Center. And that's really just to make sure folks are getting to UTC as quick and efficient as possible, and also helps us to speed up our run times. So all in all, the study includes over 250 recommendations for improvements. The recommendations include timeframes of 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, or 11 plus years. These recommendations are focused on the speed and reliability problem areas that we have throughout the system and are sortable by corridor and by jurisdiction. The project team went through an evaluation and prioritization effort that looks at metrics like mobility benefits and implementation complexity, which is what we updated this committee on last year. In some instances, there are layered recommendations. So for example, we'd have a recommendation for corridor-wide transit signal priority, as well as recommendations for individual intersections where we see those problem areas. And that was structured in a way to give us as much flexibility as possible when it comes to pursuing discretionary funding sources, as well as flexibility when partnering with local jurisdictions who may have projects that are highly localized. Since we last came to this committee, one of the items that we particularly dove into was ensuring that our Breeze speed and reliability study principles were applied to the OTC redevelopment project. What we noticed as part of the broader study analysis is that NCTD's major transit centers can become choke points for routes. As you're aware, the OTC redevelopment project includes relocating the bus loop closer to our rail platforms. So we wanted to make sure that there is streamlined access so that buses can enter and exit as safely and efficiently as possible. So we have a supplemental memo that provides a complete assessment of the routing options and considerations related to future projects within the vicinity of the OTC redevelopment. And that memo is in the final stages of review for finalization. Another key transit center of focus is Vista Transit Center. You might recall that the City of Vista, in partnership with NCTD, received an FTA grant for the Vista Multimodal Mobility Plan. We're currently syncing up the teams to ensure that we're incorporating Breeze speed and reliability study recommendations within that plan. And we'll now walk through one recommendation in particular that we're evaluating further as part of this effort. So like I mentioned, our transit centers can be choke points for Breeze service. VTC is complex because the Breeze routes must cross the tracks here multiple times per hour. The study identified multiple projects in the near, mid, and long-term horizons for VTC specifically. Some of the near-term, small-scale recommendations include movement exemptions, leading greens, and signal coordination. Midterm recommendation includes a bus bay reconfiguration, which I'll describe on the next slide. And long-term recommendation within this study is sprinter grade separation, which is included within that Vista multi-mobility plan. So discussing further the bus bay reconfiguration concept, because we have buses crossing the track so often, the idea here is that we could reconfigure the bus bays and parking at VTC to minimize the movements across the tracks and streamline access into the transit center. So essentially what that means is routes that travel west from VTC would have bus bays on the west side, and routes that travel east from VTC would have bus bays on the east side of the transit center. One local example of this is at Old Town, where MTS has bus bays on both sides of the rail corridor, and the bus bay assignments correspond to the directions that the route travels away from the transit center. So of course, it's not the most simple project, as it would require roadway and signal modifications along Santa Fe Avenue to make this feasible. So we're advancing some conceptual planning for this bus bay reconfiguration to dive a little bit deeper into the specifics. NCTD staff is currently reviewing the preliminary analysis, and we'll be setting up a meeting with Vista staff to discuss the concept in greater detail and get their feedback. Another key next step is the Buena Creek Sprinter Station. As part of our jurisdictional outreach within this study, we discussed with the county their proposed project planning within the area of the Buena Creek Sprinter Station. NCTD staff provided comments to the county as part of their ongoing Santa Fe project, and we recently received the next set of design documents for that. So we really just want to make sure that we're providing as much specificity from our breeze speed and reliability study to their ongoing planning efforts to try to sync that up as much as possible. We also have a working group with the county to discuss Buena Creek more generally, including various grant opportunities for planning and improvements in the area. And that working group includes several members from NCTD, including engineering and planning and development. And finally, we have our Breeze 303 Transit Signal Priority Concept of Operations. At the October meeting, the board authorized NCTD to execute grant agreements with Caltrans to fund this project. The goal of the project will be to develop a concept of operations for TSP that crosses the two jurisdictions, Oceanside and Vista, and fully assess existing conditions and really sync up various priorities that can benefit from this study. So that can include newer forms of signal priority for emergency vehicles in addition to transit. And because the corridor crosses two jurisdictions, it's important to collaborate closely with the cities and Caltrans in order to implement that project in the best way. And that concludes my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie, for this presentation. Suhail, do we have any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, so at this time, we are ending the public registration to speak on this item. Are there any questions or comments or anything from the board, the committee?
I have a clarification question. Thank you for the presentation. Could you please explain to me what transit signal priority actually is?
Yes. So, and I'm not as technical as as an expert could be, but essentially, there's an emitter on the vehicle that can speak to the signal, and it really kind of there's different forms of TSP, but it could either give transit priority all of the time, or if the vehicle's running late, and so it senses when the vehicle's approaching the intersection and can hold green for them. That's the kind of best example I have.
So right now, the system does not utilize that, is that correct?
We do not have that at NCTD.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if the first responders use it. A fair amount of the first responders
Yeah.
in the region use it. And I think, like Katie said, there's a couple different types. There's one that will actually change the signal, which some first responders have. The ones that are typically used in public transit is if a bus is within a certain spacing within the intersection, it will hold the green before it turns to yellow. So it's kind of a minor piece of it. Typically, what you try to do is coordinate with the DOTs and the cities and first responders so that we're all working with the same system, so there aren't multiple systems along the line. And they're just programmed differently depending on what type of transponder you have in the vehicle.
And then the individual cities give you authorization for that?
Yeah, interestingly enough, in a few other places I've been, they wanted the transit system to manage the transit signal priority and also for first responders because it was one less thing the city had to deal with.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. Only because you brought it up, and I have to, every time it comes up, I'm going to say something about it. But you talked about the redevelopment process and moving the bus bays, and I know that for many of our constituents in Oceanside, that's causing great angst. And while it might be more efficient for the buses, how are you dealing with the public on that and those discussions?
Yeah, so we will make our analysis, or we'll post it on the website for public review. We want to provide that information to everyone to just kind of walk through what our process was in evaluating that. And I believe that NCTD and the city are working closely just to make sure that it's clear what our priorities are in terms of routing the vehicles into and out of the transit center. So we'll be providing that information to the public as the public comment period, I believe, has recently closed for the OTC DEIR. I don't know if there's anything else to add there.
Yeah, but just piggyback off of that and say that I've had some conversations with citizens who live in my neighborhood. Like, who are the people in your neighborhood? The conversation I think we've had with them is, we understand the concerns that are being brought to the table, but the reality is that the solutions that are being put out there are, quite frankly, extensively unsafe for pedestrian and bicyclists. And that's kind of been our approach is, The only other way that we reroute is by taking parking off of the street and putting them through an actual neighborhood versus moving them east and west out of the transit center. The safest way for us to do that is one street, one shot in and out of the transit center. When we start deviating off of left and rights and trying to get back to Seagaze and move around those places, it creates a significantly unsafe environment for pedestrians and bicyclists who would reside along those side streets. And the only other way for us to solve that problem is to continue south out of the transit center, which goes directly into a neighborhood that's affected by a fair amount of our public comments. And that is not really what we're trying to accomplish through that. So I think our team has been very thoughtful about how to do it safely and make sure that there's still a good deal of pedestrian and bicycle access west to the beach without really disrupting traffic too much.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to get those on the record, so thank you.
Mine's just a comment, and I can't see from this map where the concerned parts are for Encinitas speed. I'll find that website and go look at what those spots are specifically. But I just wanted to make a comment that when we initiated the construction of our streetscape project through Encinitas, which brought down the highway from 2 lanes to 1 lane, we did have some friction with NCTD, not related to the lane diet, but more about just the flexibility and the use of the rail corridor. And I think you and I have emailed about what the post-project times were, and I have my anecdotal ideas about what that is, and then NCTD has their data. But I think what we've seen overall is just more use of that corridor for walking and biking has probably supported ridership. And if not specifically now, because we're still under construction, there's a vision in years to come that it would. So I just want to note that when we're working with cities that would like to pursue projects like that, that we are keeping in mind that even though speed might go down through some corridors, ridership might go up when we enhance the pedestrian and bike aspects of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Anything else from the committee? Okay, I'll go ahead and go through mine. I don't have a ton. I'm going to start with the signal priority. I know in the city of Vista, we've just put forward a significant investment for our first responders, for our fire department, paramedics. So I could definitely see an opportunity there. I've brought it up to the council as well during our public comments. And I really think that there could be a really great synergy between NCTD and emergency response. I also think it's these intersections, the congestion is one of the biggest delay factors for our first responders. So I think if we do it well, not only can we increase the safety of these conflict intersections that are conflicts for pedestrians, cyclists, people in cars, right? But we can really increase the ability for the bus to move through. So I'm really excited about that. And so I look forward to hearing from my city staff what kind of role NCTD can play with that investment that we're just making. Since the Vista Transit Center is on here, I'm looking at option 4. Originally, we were moving forward with TOD on that site. So how does that affect if we're going to do a bus bay reconfiguration, which I will tell you, I mean, I get stuck on the bus for 10 minutes sometimes just trying to leave that crossing for the Sprinter. It gets very, very congested there. So I'm very curious to see what this reconfiguration is, but how does that affect the TOD that we were planning?
Yeah, so we specifically paused VTC TOD so that we could look into this concept and also the Vista multimodal mobility plan. And the kind of TOD footprint is one of the considerations that we have for the concept development for the bus bay configuration. So we'll ultimately have to decide how many bus bays we can fit on each side, what that looks like for the TOD developable footprint. So that is a consideration that we'll have to kind of weigh internally when we look at how we might implement this project and what that could mean for VTC. And we also want to consider long-term, what that footprint would look like with grade separation, and just kind of have all possible scenarios laid out for us so that when we're making those decisions on what VTC looks like in the future, we know, exactly what the kind of phasing could be or what we want to prioritize in terms of projects.
Fantastic, yeah. And I'm wondering if NCTD is going to be part of our first ever public workshop on the grade separation. I would love for you all, okay, perfect, awesome. And I'm also curious what the road configuration would look like if the bus bay does get moved over, because there's a lot of opportunities to increase, maybe with the mid-block crossing or something like that, have safer access for pedestrians, because that Vista Village intersection is just really difficult for everybody. Let's see here. And my last question, just, what are the conversations with the local jurisdictions when we're looking at these different focus areas? Are we getting to like CIP? Are we trying to work on a CIP together? Does that mean that we're going to share the cost of it? And is this also something that relates to our sustainability cap and relates to the individual cities' caps to reduce VMT GHG?
Yeah, so one section within the final study has kind of a financial considerations, and it has a list of competitive funding that we could compete with the cities or partner with the cities to compete for. And so there are quite a few programs that prioritize projects like these that we could build a pretty good case for. Within the study, we have those mobility benefits, the travel time savings, the kind of riders that will benefit from these types of projects already cataloged. So it's easy for us to kind of quantify the benefits of each of these projects and submit to these funding partners. So our idea is really to, using the fact sheets as kind of a talking point, go to the state or Caltrans to try to identify how we can fund these specific projects and work really closely with the cities on that, because we don't want to just hand these projects over to the city and say, not our problem. We really see it as a partnership in order to get the funding to complete them.
Okay, so it sounds like we're looking at potential co-applications
Yes.
for grants. And would the local jurisdiction or would NCTD be the lead applicant?
It would depend on the funding program, yeah, but depending on who's eligible, we would partner and definitely support in terms of putting together the grant application.
Fantastic. Oh, and I do have one more question because I forgot to ask it. So the 303, obviously, we saw in our last board meeting, that is by far the highest ridership. Is there any consideration for, and I know this would be really difficult, but I'm wondering if there's any consideration for an articulated bus to increase the capacity of it?
That's not something that we had identified within this study, but
Yeah, actually, our Chief Operations Officer, Lilia Montoya, we had a conversation last week about what we want the long-term plan to be. We've changed the type of buses. The buses that we're going to purchase long-term, we're going to stick with either 60-foot, 40-foot, or 30-foot. We're actually going to get rid of the 35s. The thought process behind that is not, because I've been some places where they'll put bigger buses on a route to decrease the frequency by 5 minutes or so they'll go from a 15 to 20-minute service. That's not the goal for us. I think at certain times of the day, we want blocks of potentially the 101 and the 303 to have 60-foot buses on them, just for some of the crush loads we get, especially when school gets out. There are some runs we have out there that probably get a standing room crush load only early in the morning and around 3. So the plan for us is to replace some of our 40-foot fleet with 60-foot buses as well as we kind of go forward. Now, those are 2 years out. Once we put the order in, it's 2 years before we get them in, but that's always been part of the plan.
Okay, and this, just to clarify, the 60-foot bus is the articulated bus, or is it a
Yeah.
little bit less than, okay.
That's it, yeah, 59 and a half.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, like, around 3 o'clock, that would be great for the 303. I mean, there's some folks that can't even make it on, especially right here, when you try and catch it here in Oceanside.
Yeah, the interesting part, which freaked people out a little bit, is it's actually easier to get a 60-foot bus into a neighborhood than it is a 40-foot bus because it's articulated. So it's easier to make a tough turn. It's a little easier to navigate around schools, a little easier to navigate when there's neighborhood routes involved. So we're excited to look at getting some of those in the fleet.
So I'm hearing that it's not going to get stuck at a roundabout.
It won't get stuck in the roundabout.
Okay, great, because we got some of those.
It might take up the whole roundabout, but
All right.
it won't get
Well,
stuck
we'll
in
put
it.
a little lip on it, so. Fantastic. Okay, and just, I guess, follow-up question on that, and the last question would be, when would we see the planning for that? Because those are going to potentially be CIP projects as well, for the configuration of the bus to be able to make it in different bus bays.
For Vista?
Just in general, I guess. if
Yeah,
we're
I
looking
mean,
at the 101 and
we've already
303.
changed a lot of the configuration we had well, not a lot of it. We changed the bus bay configuration at OTC to accommodate 60-foot buses already.
Okay,
So it's just a matter of sort of doing that at Escondido as well. Really, you just need sort of a straight shot drop-off platform if you're not going to build a full sawtooth. So it's actually pretty easy to accommodate as long as you don't have more than 2 or 3 of them at a transit center at the same time.
that's like how the 235 is on a straight shot at
Yeah.
Escondido, okay.
Yeah, you just sort of swing in and drop off, and, if you've got 80, 90 feet of the platform there, you're good to go. The piece that will need to be looked at is Vista, because we don't have enough room there currently now to probably put it in articulated, so we're going to have to figure out what that looks like when we do the redesign, but.
And then just assessing bus stops along the route to confirm that
Right.
spacing from the intersection is appropriate, or if any adjustments need to be made there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I look forward to hearing that, because I'm guessing we would want to figure that out prior to putting any kind of order in for an articulated bus, but it seems like not too difficult to navigate that. Okay, awesome. Well, there is no vote required for this item. It's informational only. So the next item, and thank you so much, Katie. The next item will be a summary of the trends and observations from feedback received from customers to date for FY 2024. Andy Untalin, Assistant Manager of Customer Service, will present this item. Andy, you have the floor. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. So basically, again, customer service will be slowly branding over to the customer experience department. And basically, what we're here to do is provide, customer service to our patrons that ride our modes, utilize our services. We do that, different ways, whether it's over the phone, face-to-face interactions, through social media, through our website, et cetera. So in terms of our retail ticket offices, we have 3 major transit centers where we have staff. Of course, we have Oceanside Transit Center, we have the Vista Transit Center, and the Escondido Transit Center. Now, to support our passengers, Oceanside and Escondido, we're open Monday through Fridays, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Vista Transit Center from 8 to 5. And the call centers would pretty much be Monday through Fridays from 7 to 7, Monday through Fridays. Weekends and holidays, we do call center from 8 to 5. As mentioned on the second bullet point, call center is open 7 days per week. Of course, we have folks that are riding our different modes 365 days a year, 7 days a week. So we're here to support. ADA Eligibility Certification Center. Basically, we help support in terms of helping folks, providing them with applications so they can get ADA certified eligible. We also help them answer any minor questions that we can, then we refer them over to the ADA Eligibility Center over in Escondido as needed. Of course, we help folks with trip planning. How do I get from point A to point B? Helping with processing of reduced fare applications. My favorite, lost and found. So basically, lost and found is something that we deal on a day in, day out basis. Basically, we'll continue to track, store, and return items on all modes, on items that are found on all modes and facilities. Rider reports, basically, this is the system that we use in order to document complaints, compliments, and comments and other feedback. Again, this could be online, in person, over the phone. Basically, it says intake, tracking, resolution, response, 5 days. In reality, basically, we want, it's actually 10 days. The mystery rider program, we contract out to a different contractor called A Customer's Point of View. They do a slew of mystery rides for us monthly. So per quarter, basically, they do a minimum of 120 mystery shops, as it were, and that's spread out across all modes. So we get feedback from them just to get an independent mystery shopper type of point of view on how we can do better. The rider's guides and schedules, we put it out twice per year. Again, we're part of the cross-functional teams that getting out certain updates, ordering and distribution of the rider's guides. In terms of training, I know that myself and Alicia, we're pretty up to speed in regards to helping contractor staff get up to speed in terms of customer service training. Obviously, I always tell my folks when they onboard with us in customer service, we only have like that one opportunity to make a good first impression. Same thing goes not only for the customer service agents in my department, but also out on the modes as well. So we focus on different areas when it comes to the training. We talk about just a brief overview of ADA regulations, Title VI, and of course, customer complaints. And lastly, we also provide special event support and also as our transit ambassador program. So basically, we'll go out, we'll help out with certain events such as the Vista Resource Fair. We go out to the platforms during the Padre season, opening day of Del Mar races, things of that nature. We help folks out with the ticket vending machines. I can't tell you how much appreciation we get from our riders that when they see that orange vest or see that friendly face, helping them to help them out with the ticket vending machine or help them use the validator to use that open loop payment system. Our ambassadors are key as well. Typically, we have I think a team where I have 4, maybe 6 active ambassadors currently right now. So they are primarily at the OTC and the other coaster stations as well, but we also utilize them as well. We just had a training and meeting with them just about a week ago. They had a good chance to do some de-escalation training with one of our deputies, so that was very beneficial. Of course, we go out in regards to high ticket sales and events. We're also out for service disruptions. So during the daytime when we have staff, we'll go out, provide platform support, help organize with the bus bridges, telling people where to go, giving them up-to-date information, as it were. And also safety awareness events that could be through Operation Lifesaver. Me, myself, and Alicia were certified through OLP. And I'm just waiting to partner up with Eric and some other folks like April and Safety to go out to the different venues to give presentations on rail safety. So customer feedback, tracking, reporting, we use Microsoft Dynamics 365. That's going to be our CRM or customer relationship management system. Basically, that'll track customer comments from submittals through resolution. The issues basically are documented and then researched by our subject matter experts. So for example, if it's a breeze complaint, we capture all the pertinent information, bus route, date and time, incident location, the case description. We forward it over to breeze ops or rail ops or whoever the SPE would be. Basically, they come up with their findings. We then send a response through customer service. It could be a phone call, it could be a follow-up email. But in the end, we're trusted to get back to our customers, again, with that 10-day time frame to let them know, yes, we apologize for the negative experience that you had, and we're taking corrective actions as needed. Again, we get some feedback from our mystery rider program. It's always good to have an objective point of view when it comes to what we're doing well and what we could do better as a whole. Again, we continue to track data by mode, department, and also comment type, which we'll go over here in the next couple of slides here shortly. The customer experience data will then be reported to the board. We do that monthly, so we have a monthly CRM meeting. So we meet separately with rail ops, with breeze, with facilities, so on and so forth, and basically go over trends and patterns, what they're doing well. So we recognize their strengths, and also we help identify some areas of improvement given the feedback that we get from our customer base and from our mystery riders. We also do a quarterly or annually meeting. Again, that's done through the customer experience board reports. We just wrapped up with our Q1 reporting. We should hope to present that in December's regular board meeting. Okay, this next slide is system-wide complaints over rolling quarters. So at the very left, you see Q1 for FY24, and then to the very right, you see Q1 FY25. NCTD has received a total of a little bit over 500 complaint cases, so 509 according to the slide there in Q1 FY25. This is actually an increase of 54 when compared to the previous quarter. Overall, the majority of the feedback trends are specific to several buckets. The biggest buckets would be service, operator, facilities, and equipment concerns. So here's basically system-wide complaints by core category. So here we're looking at the biggest slice of the pie here is going to be service-related, as noted in light blue. So you've got about 200 right there. So the increase in the total number of negative reports were due to increase in service-related, security, safety, planning, impaired transit, and facilities-related feedback. Conversely, claims and accidents and operator-related and policy-related concerns have actually decreased from the previous quarter in Q1. So the biggest buckets there, as you can see, again, service-related, followed by operator and facilities. This next slide focuses on system-wide complaints. These are based on weighted ridership. So again, adjusted ridership count is based on the mode. The ridership count is normalized based on the following breakouts. So for Breeze, Coaster, and Sprinter, they're done by 100,000 passengers per complaint. Flex and Lift are adjusted by 1,000 passengers. So you can see there's a dip here from Q1 with a trend line going down with a slight rise in Q1 for FY25. So focusing on Breeze, rolling quarter, again, complaints by core category. So in terms of the buckets here, again, you've got the operator-related and the service-related. When I say operator-related, that's kind of more like route operator, things of that nature. Service could be, service late, service early. It could be cancellations due to XYZ reasons. So those are the two biggest buckets, as you can see. So in Q1 FY24, basically it trended a little bit upwards on the Q2, and then it slowly went back down, and we're pretty much a little bit above as opposed to Q4 FY24. So in Q1 FY25, Breeze received about 227 complaints. There was a slight increase of 7 due to increases in feedback specific to service and operator-related feedback. Delving into this more, again, we mentioned, it's going to be service-related and operator-related, and then followed by that would be policy-related. So overall, the majority of the feedback received in Q1 FY25 was service and operator-related. All right, so looking at Breeze weighted, so basically, as you can see the trend line there. So basically, compared to Q1 FY24, went down. Obviously, at Q1 FY25, we're at 17.2 or 17 complaints per 100,000 trips. Looking at the next slide, we're looking at lift rolling quarter. As you can imagine in the beginning, so it's going to be operator related, followed by the purple service related as well. And you'll notice on Q3 jumping up to Q4, basically it did go up a little bit. Lift complaints by core category. Again, we're talking about paratransit related, so we're talking about like service area. We're talking about 8A ramp issue, things of that nature. Service related, again, late service, early, things of that nature. Then we got operator related, so that could be route driver. Lift operations received a total of 58 complaints in Q1 of FY25, an increase of 13 compared to the previous quarter. The slight increase was due to paratransit related and service related feedback. Okay, so looking at the complaints per 1,000 trips, again, things have been trending downwards. So obviously, Robert and his team have been doing a job in getting those complaints down. So it did dip up, again, transitioning from Q4 to Q1 of FY25. So Q1 of FY25, you got a little bit over 2. Flex rolling quarter, flex complaints increased in Q1 of FY25 when compared to the previous quarter. This upward trend is a direct result, again, of the flex service expansion, the coaster connection down in Sorrento Valley. Okay, so that could attribute to the rise in complaints. The biggest bucket, again, would be your service-related type of complaints. Flex complaints by core category, just another view of the different service-related, how it is proportioned to the other types of complaints that we received. Flex operations received 13 complaints in Q1 of FY25. It increased to 5 from the previous quarter. Again, the majority of the feedback received was service-related items, late service, et cetera, and there was one operator-related concern. Here's the flex weighted, so complaints per 1,000 trips. So basically, there was a dip from Q1 to Q2, but then it did slowly rise up, as you can see. Coaster rolling quarter. So basically, in Q1 of FY24, basically, it looks like it was a lot more equipment related, but towards the end, towards Q1 FY25, you can see there's more operator related or service related in the light blue line right there. Coaster complaints increased by 11 in Q1 of FY25 when compared to the previous quarter. Another slide, coaster complaints by core category, service related, you can see right there, followed by equipment related. Equipment, again, for a coaster could be anything from the lavatories, like a bathroom's not clean, the doors weren't, the doors closed on me, that sort of thing. Operator related rounds it up as the third biggest chunk right there. So overall, coaster received 37 complaints in Q1 of FY25. The increase was directly related to service and equipment related complaints, which continues to be an opportunity for improvement. So for coaster, the weighted complaints per 100,000 trips, again, for Q1, we start up at slightly over 12, and then towards the end, we bounced up back up to 14 towards Q1 FY25. Prior to that, we were at 10, close to 11 complaints for Q4 FY24. Again, possibilities, I mean, more people are riding the coaster during that part of the quarter, that part of the fiscal year. Sprinter rolling quarter, sprinter complaints have slightly decreased by 2 in Q1 of FY25 when compared to the previous quarter. So there's been, again, some improvement right there. But as you can see throughout the fiscal year, so a big chunk of it, a lot has to do with service-related complaints. Sprinter complaints by core category, just another view of the core complaint category. Top 3, service-related equipment, followed by operator. Sprinter received 28 complaints of Q1 of FY25, while the number stayed about the same quarter over quarter. We did see a decrease in equipment-related feedback, which is good news. And then here's one more slide of sprinter complaints per 100,000 trips. You see by the line right there. So we ended up a little bit over 5 for Q1 FY25. All right, so system-wide compliments. So basically, this is, I want to present some good news here. So we did get quite a bit of compliments. Breeze did get a good majority of the compliments. So basically, good job, Breeze. But the rest of the different modes, we're able to get some compliments as well. Coaster, customer service, of course, facilities, flex, so on and so forth. But as you can see there, this is the type of stuff, the data we like to see in terms of the compliments, and we're going to do what we can to continue to improve on our services so we can get these compliments that come through. And mind you, these are the ones that are just reported. I'm pretty sure we get compliments all the time. People come up to me thanking us for a good job that we do. It's not necessarily called in or emailed, but whenever I get that direct feedback from folks, I like to actually make a report so we can put in the reporting and show some quantifiable data that we are getting compliments. So that concludes my part of the presentation. You have any questions?
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Andy. Suhail, do we have any public comments for this agenda item?
No, we do not.
All right, so at this time, we are ending the public registration to speak on this item. Committee members, any questions?
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you doing that. First, I just want to comment that I'm really glad across all modes the policy complaints are small, because that means the directors must be doing a great job. I don't know if that's true or not, but on the complaint side, when you talk about riders and stuff, but I know, do you get complaints, are those also categorized for those that maybe aren't riders, they're residents or, people that aren't actually on the train themselves? Do you get sometimes calls and complaints?
Yeah, we do. So I'll give you an example. So basically, we sometimes we get some complaints. Let's say like a bus driver cut me off, or they charged a yellow light at an intersection. So when we get those type of feedback, we do code it as a complaint with a subcode, dangerous driving, for example. Another example would be train horn complaints. We code those technically as comment and then subcode train horn so we can keep track of those. But we do get feedback that from folks that are not necessarily riding the modes, but that could be private citizens, whether they're complaining about things that they observe in the neighborhood or your driver cut me off at the last minute. So that's a couple examples that can come to mind. So it's not necessarily that they have to be riding the mode to file a complaint per se.
Okay. And then only because you brought it up, I'm just kind of curious. You talked about operator, somebody's a grouchy driver or something like that. Do you guys look at time study or anything like when those kind of complaints come in, or if it's on a later in somebody's shift or early? What do you do with those, I guess?
So going back to when we do the monthly CRM report, I know, Alicia, we pull together in our deck, we do like a trends, like how many complaints we get on Monday as opposed to like a Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know if we go too deep into the weeds as the time of day. Do we get more complaints about a certain driver at the beginning of their shift or at the end? But that's something, if that's feedback that bus ops wants to look into, I'm sure we could try to maybe include that in the deck. But I know so far we do look at days of the week to see if we get more complaints over the weekend as opposed to like a Tuesday or Wednesday, for example.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm not asking for anything more. I just more curious
Not a
what you do
problem.
with it. Thanks.
Just a quick question. Do you look at specific trends that it could be one operator that maybe needs a little coaching?
So when we do our investigation piece, so when my team, before we hand off the report over to bus ops, we'll go into a program called Swiftly. We'll pull up some Swiftly information that contains like the certain data to also include the operator number. So basically, we do see some of our heavy hitters, as it were, like repeat flyers, as Alicia likes to use that term. So if we do notice trends or patterns of a particular operator, we can pull up their operator ID and see, how many complaints does this one individual operator have, like let's say within a 6-month period. We then have turned around to bus ops and point out, okay, here's a list of some common frequent complaints from certain operators, and then we let bus ops do their thing. Again, we don't have a direct line of sight oversight with bus ops. We just give them the information, show them the trends and patterns, and we let bus ops do their own corrective actions on their end.
I also know that human nature, unfortunately, is to complain more than compliment. There's been a lot of studies that show that.
Correct.
So do you ever solicit or incentivize customers to give you feedback?
I don't solicit or incentivize folks to give us feedback per se. If during the course of our conversations with them, if they do give feedback, I do create a separate report. My staff is trained to create separate reports. So if there's like a mixed bag where they're giving a complaint, but then also they're giving a compliment on the same time, whether it's that same operator or like a different operator, we'll create that secondary report. So at least we have 2 cases like tied in. So the child case would kind of be like that compliment. So we want to make sure that we recognize and provide the kudos to the operators, and also help with the data to show here are the number of compliments that we get. I do encourage folks anytime that if they have feedback, whether it's positive, negative, or just general feedback, to write in or to contact customer service, and we can get that tracked and logged into our CRM system.
Yeah, I agree with that, and thank you. And you're doing a really important job, so thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the presentation. My question is about the complaint that I hear most in the city of Encinitas, which is related to train horn noise. Which of the categories would that fall under?
So again, we code that as a comment for now, because a lot of it has to do, and again, I don't know if I have anyone in rail in the room with me, but when it comes to train horn noise, basically, per FRA regulations, train operators are required to sound their horns.
Right.
Could be equipment, could on the right of way, could be trespassers, could be animals, could be a number of things. I know that we do have a lot of projects that are happening in the Encinitas area, especially like North Encinitas and near the lagoon areas. And, we do have a lot of equipment being staged out there. Not our equipment, but I think you get what I'm saying. But again, we are required to sound horns, and we try to educate the public and let them know here are the reasons why the engineers are sounding their horns. They have to sound their horns to serve as a warning, but also if it's not a quiet zone, I mean, they're required to sound their horns when they're approaching grade crossings, when they're approaching and departing from rail stations. So there's a whole lot that goes into it, right? I get a lot of people that call me that tell me like, Andy, I'm hearing like train horns like late into the night, and chances are it's not even our train. It could be Amtrak, it could be freight. And then also at nighttime, I mean, I tell people, look, I mean, noise will travel farther when there's less people on the roadways, or, I don't know the scientific methods behind it, but I know for me, at least my perception is noise will travel farther during the late evening hours.
Yeah, there's a lot of folklore around how noise travels in Lucadia, specifically with
yeah.
fog and wind direction and.
But, and again, I try to educate our public, and, and we try to say it with a sense of grace and empathy, and say, hey, I'm really sorry that this is bothering your sleep pattern, or bothering, that this is impacting you. And here are the reasons why we have to do it. But we'll continue to follow rail ops and see if we did have equipment traveling through. And if it turns out that we need to take some corrective actions, then we'll certainly do so.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a comprehensive answer. The reason I ask is because there's momentum in Encinitas towards moving towards a quiet zone, which is going to take tens of millions of dollars to do. But at the time that we're actually taking that action, and we want to come to NCD for the reports and see, how frequent is this happening, and put together the measures that we need to, that we've got that information ready here at NCTD for that.
Right. I mean, we can always pull our reports, if we ever need to pull reports and data to show how many horn complaints we get over a certain period of time. I mean, we'll be more than happy to go and prepare that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. I have a few questions. When it comes to a service-related complaint, so if, for example, the Sprinter is running late, is that a service-related complaint, or is that an operations, or is that equipment?
Well, okay, so the way that I understand it is that the train is late because, let's just use an equipment-related issue, mechanical breakdown, right? You can say the root cause was equipment-related, but for the purposes of our reporting, because this is the perception of the passenger, the train's just going to be late. They're not going to hear the train is late because of mechanical reasons. So, I had this pretty lengthy conversation with my boss the other day, and this is the way that was explained to me. And again, going back to your question, so in that example, if it's late due to mechanical, we're going to code it as a service-related issue.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I have a complaint about as a writer is that I don't want to just be bugging our CEO to find out what's happening. I really like it when there's more communication at the platforms.
Right.
So what I have seen is people extremely frustrated because they have zero information. And I know that to go to our X Twitter and look at the NCTD alerts, but sometimes they're not even on there. So
Right.
What I want to figure out is how to shorten the amount of time that it takes to get information out to the public and to put that out on our platforms. And I'll give you an example. We recently had a situation, and I can't remember if it was mechanical or whatever, but the Sprinter was only going to operate every hour. And I was waiting at the platform here at OTC, and people were getting really, really frustrated because all they would hear is that we moved to an hour. But no one knew when the Sprinter was going to come. So you had people leaving in frustration. You had people, just complaining. And I feel like it would have been very helpful, even to me, right, to hear, okay, we've moved to an hour service. The next Sprinter is going to arrive at X time. Because then people were just like, I don't I don't know what to do. Should I like jump on the 303 bus or a different bus, or call a Lyft or an Uber, or just, go get something to eat? So I think if we can shorten the time of communication and blast it out on the horn, right, in the platform, and maybe do it in English and Spanish, like that is where the direction that we need to move in. And I think just in general, if the train's going to be late, I have noticed that going eastbound on the Sprinter, the train is like on time. Even sometimes I feel like a few seconds early. But going westbound to Oceanside, it seems like it's always delayed by at least 2 minutes. So I factor that into my daily travels.
Sure.
But there was recently a time where it was delayed 9 minutes. And so even being able to hear that, and I was like, am I even going to be able to catch my coaster connection, right? So I think it would be really just a great practice if we can move forward with communicating a lot more with our customers, and potentially maybe having a QR code to take you to that X Twitter NCTD alert, or if there's another type of alert, or if it's on Pronto and I'm just not seeing it. But I think we need just a little bit more communication about delays. And I think that could potentially just help a lot of folks. So that's my comment on that. I have a question because I can't tell on this breakout. We recently invested a lot more in our security, and we had a lot of security related complaints prior. So I can't tell if the trend is going down or up, or if it's static on security related complaints. It looks like it's a smaller amount, but that's just, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I don't know if Karen's in the room, but basically in terms of security related, I know that we have Intercom as our security detail. So they're doing a lot more patrols, so they're doing a lot more interactions with our public. But in regards to security complaints per se, again, those are the complaints that we get from passengers saying, hey, the passenger was acting a little bit squirrely on the bus, and I'm a little bit intimidated, or things of that nature. But again, that's something that, I can continue to follow up with Alicia and also with the appropriate stakeholders and get that information back to you. But yeah, I believe there's been some improvement, and I know we've seen somewhat of a decrease in security complaints, but I think in terms of like the internal reporting from security themselves, they get a lot more interactions because there's going to be more CCIs out on the stations, and also more of the intercom folks going out and interacting with the public. But
Yeah, definitely. I would love to just see a follow-up on
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Because I know at one point we had a security related just like topic that we reviewed, and we were looking at those. And I think it was even geographical, like by per station or something like that.
Yeah, so Crystal does that. We actually just had a meeting with our Transit Security Enforcement Sheriff's Unit the other day. That will still come before the board committees. The one thing I would say is I actually believe that those complaints or inquiries will go up, and they should. I think as we increase security throughout the system, people will feel more comfortable calling them in. One of the major complaints that we get a lot is why would I call my complaint in when I'm not sure if someone is going to respond to it? I actually find that if more complaints come in or more inquiries come in about what we're doing from a safety perspective, I don't see that as a negative. I see that as our riders feel comfortable enough about the personnel that we've put out there that they want to call in things that they see that aren't correct. And so we anticipate, as we put almost 24/7 security out at the platforms and an increase in some of our transit police sort of enforcement throughout the system, that they'll probably go up a little bit over the next year, and then hopefully they'll kind of stabilize and kick off. We want our riders to tell us where they see some of these problem areas at so that we can enforce them. So I wouldn't be surprised if it went up a little bit because of our presence on the platforms, and then sort of next year leveled off and kind of went back down.
Okay, cool. I look forward to that.
yeah, so just in closing, I just want to comment really quick on, in regards to communications. Obviously, customer service, we hear a lot of the pain points, obviously, especially during a major service disruption. I'm gonna let you know that, customer service, I mean, we are knee deep into this, and we are working with different cross-functional teams within the agency. And we're always looking at improvements constantly to see where we can improve in our communications, whether it's face-to-face in person, through, PA announcements, through electronic signage, social media messaging, things of that nature. So obviously, things that you pointed out, that's something that, we're gonna continue to look at holistically and see where we can make improvements along the way. Obviously, we want to make sure that we leave a better experience for our customers that they're especially impacted by late buses or trains or impacted because of major service disruptions.
Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to seeing those changes, and I will let you know when I see them or if I don't see them, because I am sometimes one of those frustrated people just trying to figure out how I'm going to get home. And the last thing I need to put this on the public record is, as far as security is related, I think the Crouch Street platform needs a little bit more enhancement in security. I think it can be maybe a little dark. It could be maybe, the times that I've utilized it later at night. It doesn't feel super secure. So I just want to put that out there. I feel like there's room for improvement on that platform for the Sprinter. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the information, and I look forward to making more changes to help our service be improved. There's no vote required for this item. It's informational only. The last item on our agenda today, we finally made it to the last one, is an update from NCTD Plus Microtransit Service since implementation. Nick Sofol, Director of Strategic Planning and Transit Systems, will present this item. Nick, you have our attention.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. One moment. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So I last addressed MSPBD, I think the last meeting, we gave a short update. I think at that point in time, we were only about 6 weeks or so into the NCTD Plus San Marcos pilot program. So wanted to take the opportunity now to give we're just about at the 5-month marker and have more data that we could share. I'll start off with a little bit of the timeline for the service, the monitoring and the performance metrics that we're compiling as the pilot progresses, talk a little bit about marketing and outreach, and then close of some of the future service enhancements we have planned in the coming months and years ahead. So first off, let's start high-level statistics. These are as of last week. So we have completed just over 3,000 boardings, 3,352 boardings at NCTD Plus. The average wait time when someone goes into the app or requests a trip via the call center is 13.38 minutes. About 1/4 of the trips are actually using this to connect to and from transit. So notably the Sprinter stations, there's 4 Sprinter stations in the San Marcos pilot zone. So that's a pretty notable statistic there, that we are seeing folks who are using this to make those direct connections to transit. Majority of our bookings are happening through the mobile app. We've seen that that number actually increasingly rise. I'll show on a different slide coming up. That when we first started the service, you saw a greater percentage of the folks using the phone service. I think maybe they were a little uncomfortable at first getting used to the app. Now we're seeing the app bookings at 96%. On some days, we have app bookings at 99%, where almost everyone is using the mobile app to book their trip. About 1,700 app downloads and an average review of 95%. So doing really good on those high order numbers. So timeline-wise, this is going back to our ribbon cutting on June 10th. Very successful launch at the San Marcos Farmers Market. I'm going to move us forward, and you'll see the little bus move across the bottom screen for our timeline. That's thanks to one of our senior planners. On August the 1st, we actually we went and did a review of our fares, and saw that our fares were a little bit high for the market, and so we actually made some immediate adjustments. At August 1st. The fare to go anywhere within the service zone, we reduced from $5 to $3, and the fare to go from to and from the Sprinter stations from $2.50 to $1.50, and then $1.50 for all additional riders. So that was a pretty significant change we made in terms of the fares and trying to create a more accessible system. And then August 26th, obviously, school went back into session. And so that was a big moment for the service. And you'll see in the coming slides just how much that opening of school changed the ridership and the pattern. Also, this past September, we got some feedback from the community and from the city of San Marcos. They wanted to see a couple key locations and destinations added to the zone. We actually got some of this feedback even before we launched, but we wanted to make sure that the wait times were not going to be too long by making the zone too big from the onset. So we waited a couple months just to see, all right, can we accommodate a larger service area and add these spots? And it ended up, we were able to do so. So you'll see here, you can kind of note right outside that blue zone, there was a Walmart, there's a Costco, there's a Target on the other side of town, there was a community park in some other neighborhoods. And so we went through the processes of being able to add and expand those sections into the zone as a result of that feedback. So you'll see here, the blue is the original zone, and that purple expansion is where we did those, where we expanded the zone out on the periphery to be able to include those locations that were recommended by the community, and by the city. And then that became our final map. Said still serving the 4 key Sprinter stations within the San Marcos zone, but then said included that expansion to include said Walmart. There's a Walmart, there's a Kohl's, there's a Costco, there's Target. So there's a lot of generators that were asked for that we went ahead and were able to accommodate. So impacts of these adjustments we've made since the service started. So when we reduced the fare, we almost instantaneously saw our boardings per day double. And we saw bookings from the app also increase. And then since expanding the zone, something that's notable is we've had average boardings increase more than 350% since we expanded that zone. Also of note, we have seen as a result of expanding the zone and of additional ridership, we are seeing the average wait time start to get higher, which is to be expected. You have more requests for service and the service area is a little bit longer. So people are taking a little bit longer trips and the bus is covering a larger geographic area. So we are closely monitoring that wait time statistic to make sure that it's staying within our service standards. Here's a look at how some of the stats kind of changed over time. First, you just start off, and those first 2 lines are total gross completed boardings and then normalized by boardings per day. You can kind of see when you first started the service, we were looking at, 7, 9, 10 boardings a day, whereas for the first 22 days in October, we were up to averaging 62 passengers per day, and on some weekdays, we've actually seen as high as 80 or a little bit more than 80. So it's definitely picking up quite a bit as they're going from about 7 to 10 to 60 to 80 a day. The average wait time, as I mentioned before, also picking up as a result of the additional calls for service as well as the service expansion. So average wait time when we had very low ridership, as low as 8 minutes, for the wait time. When you go to the app and you say, I want a trip right now, our wait time is now averaging around 16 and a half minutes. We're monitoring that. Our service standard for NCTD Plus is 20 minutes or less. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on that stat. And if it goes above 20 minutes, we might need to add some additional service into the zone and address, that wait time. Likewise, the average trip duration is also increasing as we expanded the zone. So initially around 10 minutes, now average trip is around 12 and a half minutes. And the distance traveled as well, also increasing as folks have new destinations that are further out from the original compacted zone. Then the request to and from transit, it's been fluctuating. I think what we have is an average of 25% for the entire period, but I think what we're seeing where the number has gone down a little bit, it's because people are recognizing that they can use NCTD Plus to go anywhere in the zone, not just to transit. So they're starting to use it to go to other locations within the zone as they learn how to use the system. In terms of when people are traveling, it's pretty consistent throughout the day. We do see a peak in that traditional peak hour travel between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., but for the most part, it's fairly consistent, where you see even the 6 to 9 a.m., the earlier day trips, you're still seeing some pretty consistent ridership there. And they have the breakout by a time period, roughly about almost 20% evenly across the day with some slight peak. And where are people going? So this is the great thing about microtransit is that we have the origins and destinations of all the trips, and we're able to really capture a really robust data set of where folks are going. So the brightest bubble on this chart, as you can see, is Palomar College Transit Center, by far the highest ridership location for NCTD Plus service. That's followed up closely by Cal State University San Marcos. We got the Civic Center and the library, some apartments and some multi-unit residential. And then San Marcos High School and the shopping center adjacent to it is also a really high location for NCTD plus boardings. And so we'll continue to monitor this as the time goes on to see if there's any changes. We actually can even model this by the time of day, and we can look at, where are the origins and destinations in that first time period, let's say 6 to 9 a.m., and then see how it differs from where it is from 3 to 6. So there's a really robust data set behind the NCTD plus platform that we can tap into. And last, following up with a little bit of the marketing, NCTD Plus did participate in our system-wide Free Transit for Clean Air Day on November 2nd. And so this was us doing some outreach. There was an activation done in coordination with Sandag at the Palomar College Transit Center that was really well received. This was us out there, communicating with the public about NCTD Plus. And then not so long ago, we also participated in the Harvest Fest. This was a collaboration with City of San Marcos and the San Marcos Chamber of Commerce, where we provided free trips to and from the Harvest Fest to reduce folks' reliance on having to take their vehicles and parking on site at North City. So this was a really exciting partnership with us. And we had, I worked this event, and we had so many people just come up to us saying, "Oh my gosh, I've seen your vehicle. Can you tell me more about it?" Like, they just instantly recognized that they've seen it, the branding of the vehicle on the street, and just came up to us and like, "I want to know more," Or we had folks come up to us and say, "Hey, this has really changed my life. I now have mobility where I didn't have it before in these areas." It was really powerful. The people who actually came up to us at Harvest Festival and really, gave us some really good insight on how NCTD Plus has had an impact on their lives. Upcoming implementation. So coming up, Karina, I know you're excited. Madam Chair, we have Vista coming up. I'm looking to implement in April of 2025. That would occur in coordination with the rest of our general service change that occurs in April. So we're just about at the time now where we're going to begin engaging key stakeholders in the zone and trying to finalize that final zone geography that we're going to have at launch. And just like what you saw for NCTD Plus, the idea is we might start off with one geography, then put it out to the public, monitor the wait times, and see if we can make it larger after that. So that's the beauty of, I think, of microtransit, is to be able to put the service out, monitor it, and then see how it performs. And as a part of that stakeholder process, we'll be developing our marketing and outreach plan for NCTD Plus in Vista. Obviously, we have a lot of materials that already got built when we were doing San Marcos for the first zone, so we're going to utilize what we can, but we know that there's a very specific audience in Vista that we want to be able to target, and so we'll be having, I think, a lot of communication going forward with your office to find out just how we should best communicate within the city of Vista and get linked into the community. And then right on the heels of Vista, later in 2025, we're looking to go to the more rural area of the county in Fallbrook and Pala, where there is a lack of transit service completely between connecting those two areas. And so we are very excited to introduce service to a part of the population that has almost no options whatsoever to be able to get to and from where they need to go. We are keeping in mind grant opportunities. And so just as a little update, a couple months ago, NCTD did apply for a Access for All grant. This was through Sandag. We applied for the Vista and for the Fallbrook zones. We are waiting on a decision on that grant program. And then upcoming in the next couple months, we know that Sandag is about to release a flexible fleets grant program as well. And we're prepared to go to put an application for the expansion, or extension of the NCTD Plus San Marcos zone based on its success that we've seen so far in the first 5 months. And so with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Fantastic. Okay, so Suhail, do we have any public comments for this agenda item?
No, we do not.
Okay, so at this time, we are ending public registration to speak on this item. Committee members, any questions, comments?
Thank you. Such an exciting program. And my question is about the fare restructuring. And I'm curious to know how you came to the decision to slash the fares. And, was it because we were hearing that feedback, or was it because we were covering enough of our costs? So how did we come to that wonderful decision?
Sure. It really was looking at the initial ridership, and it was slower than we expected in the initial. and we were wondering, what's going on, and then we kind of looked at our fare structure and went, this is a little bit aggressive, at $5 per trip. It was higher than anyone else is charging for microtransit in the region, even if you include Orange County and LA County, so we were a little bit above market. And so I think we took that opportunity to make a correction to see if it would have a ridership response, and it had an immediate ridership response, so.
And just a follow-up question on that, will the fact that we did restructure our fares influence the viability of the pilot, or did we find this as a sweet spot that we can continue the service at this price?
Well, we're still going to be monitoring the cost effectiveness of the service. So we're just about at a 6-month part. So we wanted to wait a good 6 months before we started really digging down into looking at like the subsidy per passenger, letting the service actually mature a little bit before we got there. But we're certainly going to be looking at the efficiencies of the service, the effectiveness of the service, and weighing everything. This is a very popular service. We got a lot of really positive feedback, but you're right. We do have to also, weight the financial feasibility of the service as time goes on if we're going to see an extension beyond the pilot.
Yeah, I think we're having the same conversation about Coaster right now. Coaster having essentially 3 fare zones is probably not advantageous for trying to figure out one. You have to simplify it. Complicated fare systems are an immediate rejection for sometimes choice riders, especially riders who need the system. I think for me personally, in any other system I've been in, I don't understand what premium service is. Like I don't. It's public transit, right? Like, does like a Mercedes pull up and take you over to the farmer's market? I don't know. Like the idea of premium fares and premium service is ridiculous to me in public transit. The subsidy that already occurs in public transit is, at the low end, sometimes 60% on some rail systems. On bus systems, it's as high as 80 to 85%. So, like when we talk about barriers to transit, the first thing we had a conversation about with NCTD Plus is who's not riding the service because it costs $5, right? It wasn't just about the $5. It was about the fact that you couldn't use Youth Opportunity Pass on NCTD Plus. It was about the fact that you couldn't, there were all these sort of roadblocks to the system. And the reality is the system sort of has to be, you need to be able to just seamlessly get between one piece of the system and the other, whether that's Coaster, Sprinter, Flex, NCTD Plus, whatever it is. So taking the fare down to what our fixed route service was a no-brainer for us because now it's just the system, right? It's just another part of the system. And the benefit you get from that too is that now the youth can ride for free, or we can engage in conversations with Cal State San Marcos about what do we want them to be on the system, what do we want Palomar to be on the system, right? Like it just simplifies things. And the goal for us was the best way to kill a pilot project is to try to make it profitable, right? Like that's the goal is to provide robust transportation that's affordable to people. So ridership's really a driver about whether or not the pilot will be successful, not how much premium revenue we generate off of the service. And so I know that's a little bit of a shift for the agency. I know historically we've had a lot of conversation about, yes, this costs a little more. Maybe we need to have a premium tied to it. I would say we still think about those things in real time. Is Union here today? Good. Don't tell finance I said that. We still care about the piece, that is tied to some of our more expensive costing services, which this is one of them. The cost per passenger is more than it is on other pieces of our system. But if it's not a complete part of the system, it just doesn't work right in tandem with the other parts. And so we have to find a way to sort of spread that out amongst the other parts of the system. And I think we've done a really good job with that, with really what I would consider minimal financial interruption and minimal operational interruption to the system, and with a 300% increase in ridership. So
Sean, I have a follow-up question to that. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I love how nimble, I love this program. I think it's awesome. And I love how nimble you are to expand as needed and all of that. But this is a pilot program that in large was funded by some grants, correct? So when the grants, are we going to be completely dependent on grants? Because this isn't cost neutral just based on fares, right?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think the way that I've sort of approached them is you have to look at the system as a whole. There may be pieces of this that work a little better than some of the fixed route components that exist in that network now. And so there may be an opportunity for us to go back from a planning perspective and sort of reimagine what our traditional service looks like in conjunction with what we would want our demand response to look like. And so we may, if the grants for some reason don't sort of materialize over the future, what may happen is you'll see a shift to making that sort of the primary service that connects to some of our other mains. And that really needs to be the goal anyway. When we talk about frequent service in the corridor, especially when we have conversations about, east-west, we're talking about 303, we're talking about Sprinter service, we're talking about, right? You don't want these competing east-west routes against each other that are eating up gigantic chunks of the budget. What you really want to do is find a way to make that main corridor service so reliable that what you really have is sort of these little mini routes that exist that connect to that frequent service, to connect to another mini route to get someone where they need to go. Instead of a 45-minute bus ride, you've got a 15-minute to a Sprinter station, 20-minute, 15-minute, maybe you're even cutting that time down a little bit. So it's really more about how we reimagine what it looks like when we deal with the larger pieces of it and how we connect it with the NCTD Plus to those sort of higher frequency routes.
And if the wait time is longer than 20 minutes, because that's your goal, is there a plan to expand more vehicles? Is it budgeted for that?
If possible, if we can fit in the budget, that would be the plan, yeah. Because once you exceed that 20 minutes, your options are either condense the zone back again to a smaller geographic area in which you would potentially lose ridership in doing that, or add another vehicle into the service.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, the nice part on it too is you may even see a little bit of a shift off of our Lyft service. All of our vehicles are ADA compliant, but now that they're in the grid, it kind of really provides an opportunity for people to age in place. And that's always a little bit of a struggle, right? Because depending on where healthcare centers are, that always presents a little bit of a challenge. What I've seen through demand response is it's an affordable way for our folks that want to age in place to be able to get to Target, Walmart, right? Do that grocery shopping, get to the medical centers, like do the things they need to do locally without having to book a ride on our Lyft service that's very specific to an ADA component. And for those that absolutely need the Lyft service, once we sort of transition those riders over, it opens up the bookings for the folks who need it the most. And so it's kind of a win-win for everybody when we do that. It just kind of works out well.
A couple quick ones, Nick. On the app, as the time expands, and I haven't used the app, so excuse me for not knowing this, but does it show on the app your wait time is? Do they get a wait time?
Yeah. So when you book a trip to the app, it's going to match you to your next vehicle or the trip, and that's going to give you an estimated time of arrival. So it's going to tell you your wait time is approximately X number of minutes, and that the vehicle should be at the location between this time and this time. So it gives you a little bit of a window. It works very similar to the way if you're booking an Uber or Lyft, a TNC, very similar to that. It actually shows you the vehicle as it's coming towards you. You'll be able to watch the vehicle in real time. You can see the license plate of the vehicle, so it's the right vehicle picking you up. It gives you that level of detail, as the vehicle is traveling back.
And does it pick up other passengers along if they're in the route? Or
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So there's a tolerance. So if it sees that you're going in this direction and someone else, a couple blocks away is going the exact same direction, it will deviate slightly to make that pickup for a more efficient service. And that's kind of what separates us
Yeah.
from, let's say, an Uber or a private taxi, is the fact that it is a shared ride service at its core. And what we're seeing now as we're getting, to that 60, 70, 80 passengers a day, there's a greater percentage of the trips now that are pooled or that are having these shared trip elements, in the, when they make their trip.
Okay. And then the last thing is, on your map, and maybe I just didn't see it, but, where people are going, and I didn't see any reference to those expanded places. Like, are there a lot of trips to Costco and or?
To Walmart, certainly. We've certainly seen that. The Walmart's the biggest one by far. That plaza is big. That heat map you saw, though, was for the entire pilot, and we just expanded the zone back in September. So I'm sure if we pulled it from when we expanded it to today, we're going to see that bubble, especially over Walmart, And the Walmart and the Target, I think, are the two largest attractors that we've seen, from the expansion.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Sure.
I wrote my master's thesis about Walmart, so I think I already know the answer to this question, but do we ever approach these huge businesses and say, look, we're driving a lot of business to your business. Do you want to contribute financially to our pilot?
We haven't. I think that'd be a question for the broader system, right? I know we currently don't do that for any of the other services we run, right? When we add a Sprinter or a regular bus, but
We've had some small conversations about that with Coaster Connection, but they were very specific to partnerships that existed between UCSD and the biosciences group. I always try to find ways to get those agencies involved. The one thing I always get a little leery about is at any point in time, they can stop and then it can disrupt the service. So we always try to be careful what level of commitment we get from some of those businesses, because what we don't want to do is get a good chunk of money from a Walmart and then find out later on that they can't contribute that anymore and then we have to stop the service. There's other ways that we can sort of benefit from that relationship, either from things they're doing for their customers or transit improvements that occur on the property, or access to certain things that maybe we wouldn't have access to before. So there's other ways that we sort of collect what we see as value to the agency for having that relationship. I always want to be careful with those, though, because I don't want to get to a space where it gets to a point where we have to pull service back because we lose a partner in the equation.
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, really, really good question. I have a question because I saw this in our regular board meeting for NCTD Plus, and I want to say it was 2056 was a goal of boardings. Am I remembering that right? And we were under that amount for NCTD Plus, and I was just wondering if that 2056 boardings per month is like a magic number for making this financially feasible?
I have to go back and find that number. I don't think I have that one off my head. So it was 256 per month? Or per
I want to say,
annual?
I can't remember exactly, and I meant to ask it,
Okay.
but then I just was like not.
I can go
didn't
back
ask
in the correspondence from previous board meetings and try to track down the number.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
It was in the, what do you call it? The one that shows all our different modes, yeah. So just curious about that. And then NCTD Plus, this would qualify to utilize transit priority signaling and bus queue jumps, right? This vehicle, or no?
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. Just due to the capacity of the vehicle is so low. Traditionally, I haven't seen TSP and that investment in the vehicles made for a much smaller capacity vehicle, whereas typically you see it on 40 and 60-foot buses that are carrying 40+ people at a time, to be able to get that signal actualization to be able to get through for the impact of the service.
Fantastic. Okay. Just curious about that.
But NCTD Plus is more nimble to be able to take other routes around traffic, right?
Right.
So, whereas, the traditional fixed route bus has to go on that route, to pick up their passengers at the designated stops, the NCTD Plus vehicle and the algorithm that's running the trip pattern in the back has traffic data built in, and it will route the vehicle different ways to try to avoid traffic and to get efficiency.
Okay, so we have our own like Waze.
Yes. Yes, essentially, yes. It's built in the back
Okay.
of the app. Yep.
And just for clarification, the end of the pilot, does that mean end of service, or are we going to continue to run the pilot? Because I know the pilot was going to be for like 12 months. Are we going to continue to run it?
It's a conversation we need to have as we get into our next budget cycle. So it was budgeted to run 12 months. I mentioned that we are applying for the Access for All grant for the San Marcos zone. Hopefully we'll be successful in that, and that could potentially expand in the zone for another 12 months, maybe even longer through that grant opportunity if we're successful. But we'll certainly have to have a conversation through our budget to see if we can continue that beyond the initial 12-month pilot.
Okay, and when is that conversation?
The budget conversation or the grant conversation? So we've shifted gears a little bit from our perspective on how we're managing budget conversations. We're actually going to have one internally starting in December to sort of revisit where we are at the halfway mark. What that really will allow us to do is by the time we get into March, we'll have a really good idea of what we need from an operational perspective and what we may want to retain from a service perspective. And so probably around April or May of next year, we'll have that in front of the board to kind of give them an idea. And we'll put it out through updates whether or not we think, one, we're going to be able to get the grants to be able to push it forward, or two, if we're just going to go ahead and keep it in the budget as part of our current service.
Okay. And the last thing I have to say is, Sean, you made a great comment about aging in place and, the connection to the resources that you need on a daily basis in order to age in place, medical being one of them. And I'm just curious to see if we are going to try and address in the future the Tri-City hospital. Because I know that originally that was not part of any of the service area, but that Tri-City area is just critical. I mean, you got Carlsbad, Oceanside, Vista, and a lot of folks, that need to access not just the hospital, but they have a bunch of different medical services around that area. So I'm really curious to see if that's something that we could fold in. I know it's difficult because it's a large swath of land. I mean, I think Oceanside's like 38, 39 square miles. So, but 42, you're 42 and growing. Okay. All right, 42 and growing. I know when I first started in Vista, we were 18 square miles. Now we're 19. So we're just growing a little bit. And the very last thing that I will say is hopefully you all will come to the Strawberry Festival in Vista. It's around June 2025. There's a lot of people there. Nice. It would be great to have a booth and let people know what you all are doing.
That would be great. We can do something similar to what we did for Harvest Festival. It worked fantastic. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, this was also an informational item, so no voting necessary. And the next scheduled meeting is our regular board meeting. It's going to be here, November 21st, 2024 at 2 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone. This meeting is adjourned. Have a fantastic rest of your day. We're going to miss you, Kelly.